Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, can football ever solve the sports racism problem? Lucky, the special one, he can't resist a dig at Jurgen Klopp before Manchester United's trip to Anfield today, and it's yet another turbulent week at the FA. The chief executive, Martin Glenn, he announces he's quitting next year. Well, at least I guess they'd never leave a job half done. Neil Custis is the Manchester football correspondent at The Sun. John Cross is the chief football writer at the Daily Mirror. Rodney Hinds is the sports editor at The Voice, and Oliver Kay, he's chief football correspondent at The Times. Morning, guys. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning. Don't forget to tweet the show at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on your screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at the papers then. The back pages starting off with Manchester United's trip to Anfield today. The Lucky Stars, Mourinho's dig at Jurgen Klopp. Everything is going Liverpool's way at the moment. Everything's going Tottenham's way as well. Pochettino, he says Spurs, they can dare to dream. Christian Eriksen's goal yesterday, the winner against Burnley at Wembley Stadium. According to The Sun this morning, the back, 90% of Manchester United's stars, they want Mourinho out of Old Trafford. He's lost their support. I'd love to know the 10% who want him to stay, the 10% of the media who want him to stay. One of them's definitely on this table this morning. If Mourinho does leave, he's got a home for him. He can go back to Inter Milan. That's the back page of the Express this morning. Of course, he did win the Champions League with them back in 2010. But the serious stuff this morning... Sorry, Neil?
No, I say he won the treble.
Oh, sorry, win on treble. OK. Thank you for that. The serious stuff this morning in The Observer, Daniel Taylor's column, how can a sport worth billions spend just a pittance on fighting racism? Sam Wallace's column in the Sunday Telegraph this morning, it's not for the fans to reclaim the Jewish slurs. Football has got no place for them. A continuation of that theme as well. Oliver Holt's column in the Mail on Sunday. Any progress in race relations has stalled in football. Sterling has crystallised the feeling of resentment. That's Ollie's hard-hitting column in the Mail on Sunday this morning. That's exactly where we're going to start this morning. You may have noticed we've got a fourth guest. We normally have three guests on the Sunday Supplement. Rodney has very kindly agreed to join us this morning. The reason Rodney is here is because he is an authority on subjects as serious as racism and race relations in football. We do book our guests well in advance of the programming, which is why Neil, Ollie and John are also on this table. We didn't feel it was appropriate to stand any of them down for this show, but we wanted to add Rodney's voice to the table, which is exactly what we've done this morning, Rodney, and thanks very much for joining us.
No problem.
So let's begin with the fallout from last weekend at Stamford Bridge and Raheem Sterling. Of course, we talked about his Instagram post last weekend on this programme. How do you feel football and the media has dealt with this subject throughout the week in terms of its reaction, its coverage?
It certainly started the debate, hasn't it? That's the main thing. And that's where I've got to give Raheem an awful lot of credit. And as long as the debate is taking place, we can find some solutions. That's the way I see it. He's a young man, what's he, 24 now, senior England international, Premier League winner with Manchester City. And for him to take the step that he did, I've got to applaud him because there's more than an element of truth in what he's saying. And he stood up. He's now got some sort of deal, I think, from Nike, which I think has been broken this morning. So respect to Raheem Sterling, but it's now a case of what happens next. What will the authorities do? I think one of the headlines suggested, you know, the game is awash with money. Some of that money, some of the strategy now needs to seriously go into trying to deal with this issue. Because, you know, if we're not careful, we'll be back around this table in X amount of time. Yeah? Can you ever get rid of it? Possibly not, but we can certainly deal with it better than it's being dealt with now.
Well, why, when you say possibly not, why not?
It's a societal problem, isn't it? You know, the incident at Stamford Bridge was 4 or 5 people allegedly out of potentially 40. You know, there's always going to be an element, but we should certainly try. For a young man who doesn't have a book to promote or hasn't been retired for 10 years, he's a current football player, to stand up and make that stance. I salute him, I applaud him, because there could be an awful lot of grief still coming his way in terms of the chanting and the tribalism that goes on in football. Doesn't matter to him right now. So I think we might have reached a seminal moment now. I think that what will probably happen in the future, I think sports people, I think the issue of race will feel that they can actually stand up and say something now, and it might actually get some attention.
It certainly attracted a lot of attention in the week, John. Raheem Sterling, someone that we all know on this table. You've known Raheem for a long time. Did it surprise you that he took to Instagram last weekend with his post?
Yeah, it did surprise me.
He made a stand, that he took responsibility and said, actually, enough. I'll make some I'm going to make some changes.
Yeah, it did surprise me simply because of the boldness of it. And listen, I was at that game, and you know, he clearly heard the chants behind him and the abuse from behind him, and he thought, you know what? I mean, we all saw his reaction at the time, which was fantastic, I thought, because he laughed it off. And I don't mean that in any way being dismissive,
under intense provocation,
but basically he's showing that, you know, you're not affecting me, I'm getting on with the game. But then afterwards has seized the moment and used that moment to kind of broaden the issue. And I think then basically say, look, we've got to look at it from all why is this happening? Why are we, you know, why am I being abused here? Why are other players being abused up and down the country? As I'm sure they are on a regular basis, to be honest with you. And he's widened it into a media debate. He's widened it into something in society as well. And I just thought that took so much courage to do, because I think I'm pretty sure it must be unique for a current England international
and that's what
to
makes
take
it so
that
powerful
stance.
for me.
Absolutely.
That's what makes it so powerful.
And he's got this platform, hasn't he? And I think that's fantastic. And I've known him for some time, and I think, you know, I've done various pieces with him, and it's you know, it's really encouraging that he's sort of grown in maturity. He's grown, I think, as a real, you know, voice, I think, of his particular generation. And I've got so much respect for him. I also think it's important to stress here that I think a lot of people this week have misjudged the situation in that basically that he has a difficult relationship with the media. Well, I actually think he gets on. I think the media really respect him. Certainly, I think we do on a, you know, football reporter basis.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we've really got so much.
I would
respect
say, Crossy,
for him.
he is one of the few England players. If you see him, will make a point if he sees you of coming over to say hello.
Absolutely, 100%. I saw him in the tunnel.
He's got that confidence about him, no problem.
Saw him in the tunnel. After that Chelsea game, I was down there to obviously, you know, to do sort of follow-up interviews or whatever. Saw him, said hello. Always pleasant, always polite, always sort of kind of ready to chew the fat. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And if there's one player who I think can stand up and then make a difference, you know, and make this absolutely make that point in time, then I think it's Raheem Sterling.
The point you made about the media and the two footballers and the buying of houses. We have to be careful with what we're doing. We have to be careful. We have to give due consideration to people's thoughts and feelings, because what he's done, he's actually flipped it. Because, you know, we're paid for our opinions around this table. He's actually given his now, not necessarily on a subject relating to him, but the two footballers and the two properties and how it was viewed in a newspaper or online. So, as I said, all credit to him. And as I said, I think it could be a seminal moment simply because I think what he'll do, or what he's done, he's liberated and empowered potentially other sports people who have issues that they want to highlight to go and do their thing.
Guys, there's a lot to explore here, and there's a lot of different layers. I'd like to bring in Johnny Lou's column this week, when he talked about our experience as journalists, and we've been in the company of people of prominence and stature and public figures within the sport who have made, certainly at the very minimum, inappropriate remarks in our company. And I've been in that situation, and it struck with me. John's column hit home with me particularly because I've been in that very situation at a dinner when a very high-profile manager said something completely inappropriate repeatedly, but I didn't do anything about it. But I felt deeply uncomfortable and disturbed, and I still do. But my issue is, well, I didn't do anything about it. So am I part of the problem?
And how long,
I didn't say anything.
And how long ago was that? Because
7 years ago, max, maybe 6.
I think things that probably would have got brushed under the carpet 6-7 years ago, certainly 20 years ago, would now not get brushed under the carpet.
But I felt when he sat there, I felt,
Yeah.
Neil, you've got to say something. You can't let this go. You can't let it go. This isn't right. Just say something, and I didn't.
But it's difficult. Well, it felt a lot more difficult to speak up then than I think it feels now. And I think people like Raheem Sterling speaking up in the way they have, but I think more generally, I think across society, I think there's a far greater willingness to say, look, you can't say that. You can't look. Do you honestly have that opinion? Because this, and this. I think when we talk about football's racism problem, when we talk about a problem in journalism, etc., I think everybody would acknowledge that the problem is in society, and sometimes that will be reflected in football.
The problem I've found, and it won't stop me from doing it though, is that, and I'm not just talking about surrounded by high-profile football people or what have you, is that when comments are made, which I think are inappropriate, I have stepped in to say, you just cannot say that. And I'm looked upon as the odd one, you know? Saying like...
Because you spoke up?
Yeah, yes. Oh, well, what's the matter, you know, everyone uses that. I said, no, they don't. And like, you know, and I've been in situations where I've spoken up and then the next week I haven't been invited out. People
Really?
People look at me like I'm some sort of nutter. And I won't stop doing it. There was one time I was in a cab and this guy kept using this racist expression. I just said, stop the cab, let me out. And the people who were in the cab with me chased after me and said, look, Neil, you know, he's like, you know, I said, look, I said, if we all decide that we're not going to say anything, then nothing changes. I said, so I won't stop saying things. And I won't stop putting myself in those positions. Now, I'm not saying I'm any sort of hero in this situation. I'm just saying that you're sometimes made to feel uncomfortable for taking a stand. But it won't stop me from you know, doing that in social situations and in company. And me and Oliver were talking about it last night, and he was reminding me of situations where I've done it. And I won't stop doing it because I just find it so abhorrent. And I think the media this week has picked up the baton, if you like, that's been handed over to Raheem Sterling and say, there, how are you going to deal with it? And I think they've dealt with it well, and I think they've dealt with it extensively. And that doesn't...
Did Raheem shame us into doing it?
No, he's a high... I mean, look at the Observer today, all the different countries and all the different problems they've had. Seamus, I don't feel... I don't...
I think a sub-editor or a sports editor will, the next time that crops up, say, like, kid buys mum a house, right?
Yeah.
They'll re-examine it and basically won't do it.
But
And
it's
if there's I know it's only a small thing,
But it's a start,
that's
though, isn't it?
exactly.
It's a
And
start.
I think, does that shame us? Well, probably, yeah. Because if you look at those two stories, I always argue this, every story is different. But I tell you what, every story is different and it has slight nuances. One's well-known, one's, you know, unknown kid and that sort of thing. But ultimately, it's one there that goes, well, he's absolutely spot on. We can't argue against that.
You couldn't
Rodney,
argue with it.
You can't argue against it.
I agree with that. But Rodney, before Raheem alerted us to it and drew our attention
It was
to
still
it,
a problem.
well, yeah, was there a problem? Would you?
I think there was still a problem, yeah. In fact, I know there was a problem, but as we've all, I think, said around this table, and as I said earlier, Raheem isn't 10 years into retirement, got a book to sell, so he wants to give us a little bit of titillation. He's a current international player, and I think that's the power here. That's the power. And he's done it, bearing in mind, as I said, there could still be a lot of grief for him at away grounds or wherever he goes, etc., etc. So all power to him as far as I'm concerned. And while our sports people are not politicians, the power of sport and the influence of sport means that what happens in our arenas could potentially influence other areas. And that's why I think it's so important that what's happened in the last week. I mean, in his day job yesterday, he scored another goal, so it's clearly not affecting him. His manager has lauded him as well. And said
Man City, I think, of this week have been great in their support.
they've been great. I think
Really.
Guardiola's been great as well, because he said, you know what, I respect this guy for the way he's gone about his business. So some of the images that have been painted of Raheem clearly are not true. He's not an intelligent... You've spoken to him several times. You've said what you needed to say. He's an intelligent guy with his head screwed on.
I think what would be interesting is the reaction to him from away fans in the coming weeks. In that, I would hope that football shows that most right-thinking fans, and I think the large percentage in football grounds are, support him and show a real stance where, if he comes to take a corner or throw in, applaud him, something like that. Just football fans have got a chance here to really show that we're going to stand up against this and we're going to show our support for him. I mean, but just on I think what was very powerful were the actual photographs that appeared in the paper of the actual hatred and viciousness of these people, and I think that those stills really hit home. So in the sense, the media, you know, weren't hiding this or weren't doing anything like that, as with when the banana skin was thrown at Arsenal. You know, it was a big subject then, and nobody ignored it. So, you know, there's a long way to go, I know, but I think in our experience we have seen strides in the right way over 10 or 20 years, but there is still a long way to go.
You talk about the banana skin, and I think it was the week before. I was away, so it was the week before, wasn't it? The North London derby. Then you had the Man City, Chelsea Man City scenario. We all know this country, in terms of kick it out, etc., have done some wonderful work. And it's not just about the high-profile games, is it? Because we know at grassroots level stuff is going on that is totally abhorrent. But when you're talking about the best league in the world and this thing going global, right? When you have the North London derby banana skin, and then you have the abuse towards Raheem, it's not a good look, is it?
No.
You almost think, have you moved on? Have you moved on? Yes, you have, but by how much? And it still confirms there is still so much work to be done.
But it shouldn't be about the brand and how it looks.
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't.
I feel like a lot of people have looked at it this week and thought, oh, look, this is not a good look for English football. I mean, it's not about how it looks, it's about how it is. And it's I mean, one thing that I thought was fascinating that Jonathan Liew wrote this week is how we, I mean, I feel we, on the sports pages, do talk about racism. We do highlight racism. We do condemn it, probably in a way that doesn't happen in other sections of the media, which is why I feel some of the criticisms that our industry have made of ourselves over the past weeks are maybe a little bit harsh. But while we do that, Johnny's point was that we react to incidents. We think of racism as an incident. Someone throws a banana, a monkey chan. I think we don't look deeply enough at the core of the problem, the wider issue, you know, beneath the surface, why that's happening. But that is a society thing. It's not really a football thing. But football obviously has an opportunity and a duty to do more, and we have an opportunity and a duty to do more.
Yeah. There was also an interesting, one of the papers this week, I can't remember which one it was, did an interesting piece with some non-league players, talking to players in lower down the league about under 11 games, under 12 games and all this. And so it is not just a high-profile football.
No,
and it's because it's off the camera, because you haven't got reporters there. It's actually worse, it seems to me, lower down, because people think they can get away with it. I mean, since when is a football pitch and a football ground become a bastion of this hatred? You know, or why should it be? I'm not saying since when, you know what I mean? Or why should it be allowed to become a bastion of this hatred? You couldn't act like that in a restaurant or a pub, where even just shouting, you know, F off or anything like that. You just can't behave. But a football ground seems to be like, oh, we can go to football and behave how we want. But what you know, the fact, I mean, I've not noticed myself in lower league, but it is obviously there and bad, and there is a lot of bad comments. And I thought that was a really good piece, because it took it beyond just the high-profile games and how it's riddled through society.
Sure. Okay, we'll just press pause there for a moment, because we will revisit this subject in part 2, whether football is doing enough to combat the problem of racism in the sport. More on that coming next. Welcome back. OK, let's continue the theme this morning. Can sports really deal with the problem of racism in football? Sam Wallace's column this morning says it's not for the fans to reclaim the Jewish slurs. Football has got no place for them. Let's talk about some of those songs, John, that Tottenham in particular sing. They believe, it seems, that a vast majority of their supporters who do sing at their matches believe that they can sing. I think we all know the phrase and the song in question. Can they sing it?
Honestly, if you don't
Is
sort
it
of
appropriate?
understand almost the dynamics of London football, you may be not getting this argument. Because knowing that we would talk about it on the back of what happened with Chelsea fans, you know, singing that song on Thursday night, it's kind of took a straw poll of some of my mates who are, you know, Spurs fans and then fans of others, and you know, is that
It's very scientific.
Is that
of you.
song? Yeah, I know. Well, you know, I like to do research, Neil. You know that, but it's basically, I would say, I mean, you know, I covered Barcelona Spurs in midweek, and you hear that song so loudly across the Nou Camp. If you're travelling to the game on planes, you know, Sam references there, on the way to the game, you know, sort of on the way back from the game, it's there. And the vast majority of Spurs fans do not see a problem with it whatsoever. Even the Jewish ones, who, you know, a lot of us might think, well, actually, that could be, you know, quite offensive, but they sing it with real vigour and pride. And yet you will still get a minority of Spurs fans, I think, who don't think it's appropriate and don't see it's right. But the other thing about, I think, the dynamic of London football, and what I mean is that basically, I think if you are a Jewish fan of another London club, you do absolutely, I think the vast majority would take offence of it and from it. And I think, therefore, is it something that we need to sort of re-examine and have a look at? Then arguably so, yeah. I mean, it's a really strange one, because I think the Spurs fans, whether they like it or not, but them singing it almost makes it acceptable to sing and gives other people an excuse to sing it, shall I say. Mm-hmm. Because please don't misunderstand me when I say that, because the Chelsea fans who then sang it in Budapest, and we should, you know, absolutely make it clear that basically it was a minority, but Chelsea obviously felt empowered enough to release one of the most, you know, significant and strongest statements against their own fans, questioning the fans who have travelled all that way and their brain power if they're singing that song. So that's a pretty strong statement. But basically, those Chelsea fans, you know, sang it even more so. Did they sing it even more so after the week we've had? I would probably argue, you know, yes, it's something of a reaction, which I think is you know, is a little bit sad. But do they sing it at a lot of games? Absolutely they do. And I think it's something that we have to address. It's a really good column, but by Sam, and I think it is something that we have to re-examine, because I think it's one of the uglier sides, but potentially of basically the London football dynamic scene. It's a bit like, you know, can you get, you know, I mean, we will talk about, you know, sort of black artists in music, for example. Can they use the M word? Is that acceptable? And you know, unfortunately, that has sort of kind of, you know, sort of things of that, you know, in that song. You know, can Jewish Spurs fans therefore sing that and therefore be deemed acceptable? I think that other fans, when they're singing it against the Spurs fans, they sing it with particular vigour because they know they're being a little bit naughty, don't they, basically? And they're singing it against the Spurs fans because their argument is, well, the Spurs fans sing it, so why can't we? And it is a real, you know, political powder keg, basically. And I think it's something we perhaps need to re-examine.
I think it's interesting. I mean, Crossy says about it being about London football, and that's what it strikes me. It's a thing that manifests itself in whether you're Tottenham or whether you're anti-Tottenham. And I think for most of the grounds in the Premier League, outside of London, I don't think Spurs fans would say that they face this or that you hear anti-Semitic chanting. It very much. I mean, Chelsea are the ones who have been had it highlighted most of all, I think, and they've sort of reignited that this week. But it feels like it is a thing around Tottenham. It doesn't feel like that's something that Tottenham fans get when they go to Old Trafford or Anfield or Goodison or wherever. It feels like it's something that's very much in London football, and it's weird in a city as cosmopolitan and multicultural as London that exists. It really is weird, and the chant itself is. We were saying off air. We were saying it's weird that you know to sort of be so desperate to claim that identity when I think by doing so you probably whip up more antagonism than anybody think is than anyone would like. I think everybody loves or likes or loves the passion, the sort of tribalism, the hostile atmospheres. But the thing around this, the anti-Semitic chanting and the pro-Semitic chanting, if you wanted to see it that by Tottenham, is weird and it's very unhealthy. I think if everybody were to take a step back, I think it would certainly be a good idea if fans just took it upon themselves to say, look, no more. Let's move on from that.
Rodney, do you have a feeling that football fans, when they assume their club's colours, whether that's not only at the stadium, but when they're talking with their friends and when they're talking and arguing about football at work, that they assume a different persona when they're in football fan mode, that they believe there are different rules apply. You can say what you want when you've got your club's colours on, but actually when you've got a shirt, suit and tie on, that actually you've got to behave in a very, very different manner. Absolutely.
I mean, it's a difficult one, but as John said, I mean, if Tottenham fans are singing it, it opens the door, doesn't it? But your point, I mean, you could be suit and tie 1 minute, but then you assume the colours and then you can do as you please.
But do you think football has opened up that opportunity? That's part of the problem, is that football almost encourages that behaviour?
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. I mean, but it's just, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? That's the issue, because Tottenham fans clearly haven't quite dealt with the issue yet in terms of that chant. So there's confusion at the moment, isn't it, really? So I think until Tottenham decide amongst themselves, for want of a better term, what's going to happen, I think there's always going to be a problem.
I think we've, it's a very fine line, isn't it, between a great atmosphere and one that's, where the animosity is just totally over the top. And as I say, you actually will see in most grounds that when a player is going to take a corner or the ball's going out for throw-in, there are people in the front row shouting all sorts of them, total abuse. I mean, I sometimes wonder how the players just don't turn around and do something about it, But I mean, the stuff David Beckham used to get. I mean, the stuff Wayne Rooney used to get.
Beckham always used to give it the look, though, didn't he? He wouldn't ignore it. He would. Well, yeah, he would give the fans a look.
And invariably curl one into the top corner about 5 minutes later. So the stuff Gary Neville used to get. I mean, a lot of Man United players, to be fair, but they, week in, week out, every single away game was enormous. And so we've got to be careful to keep the atmosphere, but not let it spill over. And in the end, it's down the individual. Why can't the individual just think to himself, I'm going to cheer my team on, I'm going to do this, I'm going to enjoy the afternoon, but do I really need to go that far? Yeah. It's like, someone's been frustrated all week at work, it's all right, I'm going to football on Saturday, I can let it all out.
And the football lets them down, maybe they not get the result that they need.
Yeah. I'll tell you
it's
what,
not an excuse, though,
I've been to many, many North London derbies, sort of, down the years. And in the 80s, the anti-Semitic songs were horrific, absolutely horrific from Arsenal fans. And I can't ever get away from the feeling that the Spurs song during those days wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And I can't help but feel, and maybe this is the argument, that basically Spurs fans have embraced that feeling of kind of being antagonised and reclaiming it and basically using it to show their power of support. I mean, Spurs fans are really passionate and they whip up a fantastic atmosphere and they're really strong supporters. But they clearly feel empowered by, vast majority of the fans do feel empowered by this particular word, by this particular song. And maybe it's a reaction to some of the horrendous abuse that was chanted, sort of during the 80s and early 90s. I personally think it's died down now, but I do think it's still there. But it's not as bad as it was in that particular thing.
Some football grounds are horrendous places to be in the 80s, weren't they? I mean, I stopped going for a while as a Newcastle fan because I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't feel safe.
And they weren't much good.
Well, yeah, but that's been a tale for some time. But I just wasn't enjoying the whole experience. Whereas now, I feel I can take my 15-year-old daughter, you know, my 18-year-old son. And my 18-year-old son is not a football fan, but he loves the atmosphere of a football ground.
Please
So
don't turn this into a plea for Mike Ashley to sell this football club.
No. I'm talking. I took Anya to Man City the other week when I had the day off, and you know she just enjoys watching the football and enjoys the experience, as we all do watching Man City. To be fair, at the minute. So I feel safe taking her to a football ground. I wouldn't have done 30 years ago. I just simply wouldn't have done it.
But the thing about, you know, tribal atmospheres and you know, when I go to Liverpool, Man United later, I want it to be that tribal, hostile, partisan atmosphere. It's one of the fixtures I look forward to most. Yeah. You look at the build-up in the papers, the build-up on TV. It's all about hyping up these, you know, two tribes, etc. And inevitably, there are some within a ground of 50,000 who will go too far. Whether that might be. There might be things chanted later. I don't think Rachel, but there might be things chanted later that have us all condemning it again, and that's not because of the media build-up, but sometimes the media build-up fuels that sort of antagonism that already exists between the clubs.
But it's still a huge issue in the media and whatever every time Rangers and Celtic meet, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
It's still a huge issue.
Absolutely.
And to be fair, the Scottish media do not ignore it. You know, they do not just accept it. This is part of it. You know, they do columns, they do speak out there. It doesn't make any difference, but you know, they don't ignore it.
You know what? Well, I did think it was really interesting on the back of Raheem Sterling's, going back to that very briefly on the back of his Instagram post. I think in previous sort of kind of years, I think the media would have, and particularly newspapers, would have denied in a way that basically Raheem Sterling was having a go at the newspapers. But actually, we reported that, I think, as a collective. We reported that the fact that basically he was having a go at sections of the media, including newspapers. And I actually thought that in a way, was quite a positive thing. Because, do you know what I mean? Sometimes we would have changed it. He had a blast at his critics. He had a blast at whoever it might be. You know, he hit back after suffering this abuse. Well, actually, I think the vast majority of newspapers have gone squarely. Do you know what? He's having a go at newspapers here. And we did report that, which I think is, you know, in what has been a difficult week for newspapers.
It would have been hard to hide that way.
It would have been,
Neil. He's got about 5 million followers.
Well, I know,
on Instagram.
and this is the game changer, isn't it? Because the players have now more media reach than basically the newspaper. We would be idiotic to ignore that. And I think actually Jonathan Lew's going back to the column was actually on the money there. Basically, he's you know, that he's sort of suggesting that sort of in the past we'd have ignored it, and you can't ignore it now because it's there, and we'd be idiotic not to react to it. And you know, it just goes back to let's hope it's a point in time.
Rodney, Daniel Taylor's column in the Observer says this morning, it makes the point: how can a sport worth billions spend just a pittance on fighting racism? The FA just giving the Kick It Out campaign. Or organisation, £125,000 a year. Show racism, the red card doesn't receive a penny from the FA. Is the answer to throw money at the problem?
Part of it, yeah. Part of it, yeah. If that helps in terms of education and get the message out there. It's not the total answer, obviously. But I think when we were talking right at the start, this is why there has been issues, because is the issue of racism being taken seriously? When the game is awash with money, and that campaign is getting the figure that you said. You know, and I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, we all know people from Kick It Out who are doing a wonderful job, but they've got one hand tied behind their back a lot of the time, haven't they?
What would you do with the money? I mean, if you were given like an open checkbook, £1 million, say...
Maybe there's a need for a nationwide roadshow.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Where you can go to all these football cities and towns that we've alluded to and just make a stop. It doesn't have to be difficult. Make a stop and educate all the time, because that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Just a final point, because we've got to go to a break, and we have had talked this in two parts. If you make an inappropriate remark, Rodney, or something that's considered socially unacceptable, is there a way back for that person? They've made a mistake, but is there a way back, or are they now labelled, you are racist, that's it?
I think there's a way back, certainly. I mean, should that inappropriate behaviour continue, then obviously, no, there's a challenge there. But yeah, well, I mean, we can all make mistakes. That's not a problem. It's just how long you make it for and what's the intent behind it.
Yeah, sure. OK, good stuff from the chaps this morning. OK, next up, we're going to talk about Neil's favourite subject. Happy about that?
Yeah, good.
Let's talk Mourinho. It's coming next. Welcome back. With us this morning, Neil, Custis, John Cross, Rodney Hinds and Oliver Kay. Let's just remind you what's in the papers this morning. We've been discussing the issue of racism in football in parts 1 and 2 of today's programme. Daniel Taylor's column in the Observer this morning. How can a sport worth billions spend just a pittance fighting racism? It's a similar theme in Sam Wallace's column this morning. He says it's not for the fans to reclaim the Jewish slurs. Football has got no place for them. That's Sam Wallace in the Sunday Telegraph this morning. Oliver Holt, equally hard-hitting as you'd expect. Any progress in race relations has stalled. Sterling crystallised the feeling of resentment. There is a big game on, though, which is what we're coming on to now. Sunday Mirror. Lucky ones. This is José Mourinho talking about Liverpool, who says that they've been lucky this season. They've had some big wins, some last-minute goals. The Sunday People, Mourinho, everything is going Liverpool's way. At the moment, the Sun, Mourinho won't like this, and we know he reads it. 90% of Manchester United stars, they want him gone. Lose today, maybe he will be. Inter Milan, his former club, they want him back at the San Siro. That's the Express this morning. OK, he's been talking about the trophy counts. It's 25 if you include the Super Cups and Community Shields. I count them. But do they really matter? How important are the trophies?
Well, I think they do matter. I mean, like, you know, Manchester United have been in chaos.
Not everyone gets to win one, though, do they?
Well, no, but I mean, Manchester United have been in chaos for 5 years and have won 3 trophies. You know, Liverpool have won 1 since 2006. And for fans, do fans remember, you know, the night in Stockholm, or do they remember getting into the top 4? You know, do they remember an FA Cup final? Do the kids remember a Wembley FA Cup final? Or do they remember the fact that, you know, we finished third, we're in the Champions League, and it's financially actually better for the team, you know, but Liverpool lost, but didn't they play wonderful football, so why don't we support Liverpool instead? I mean, you're in it to win trophies, and he's a serial trophy winner, and he does it season in, season out.
Louis van Gaal
won the FA Cup.
They sacked him.
Yeah, because, I mean, he'd bored us to death. I mean, he really had. I mean, like...
It's kind of the point I was making.
Hang on.
My point.
No. No. That was a different level. Seriously, that was a different level altogether.
Really?
That was a different level altogether. And even if he'd finished in the top 4, they still would have got rid of him. And I've never seen a manager booed picking up a trophy.
It's just too easy now.
I've never seen a manager booed picking up a trophy, and he was by his own fans. So, and these are Man United fans who try to stay as loyal as they possibly can to a manager. So... no, I mean, Louis, that's a different box altogether. So he was trying to actually bizarrely implement what Pep Guardiola is doing at Manchester City. The difference is Pep did it very well and he did it very badly. So I don't know what he was saying to the players. But today I'd really feel today is a tipping point, one way or the other. You know, get a point, no matter how they get a point, despite the criticism he gets for getting points at Anfield, whereas Pep Guardiola gets praised to the skies for losing 4-3. This is a tipping point because a poor performance today and a heavy defeat, and when I say heavy, I mean 2 or 3 goals. And I think a lot of people's patience is going to snap and go because it's different to, with all respect, Neil, there's one thing drawing against Crystal Palace, but there's another thing that when it happens against one of your fiercest rivals. David Moyes, towards the end of his times, had some tremendous results away from home, scoring 4 goals at Newcastle, 4 goals at Aston Villa. But in between that, he lost to Man City and he lost to Liverpool. And those are the ones that the fans really remember, no matter how many points are available for it. So I think we really have got to a tipping point now. And I don't think much still should be necessarily held by the midweek performance against Valencia because it had been built up as a meaningless game. In the end, it was meaningful, but nobody was expecting that. And when Rashford, Lingard and Ashley Young came on, they were a completely transformed team. And hopefully all 3 of those will play this afternoon, and it'll look very different. But as I say, it's a tipping point. He's under huge pressure. I think he's done well in his first 2 years, but he is carrying the burden of the steady decline from the glory days, and as every manager will from now on until they turn it round. And I don't know who's going to do the better job than him.
Let's go back to the trophy question. We'll come back on to Mourinho's future in a few minutes' time. Do they matter to you, Ollie? I wrote a column maybe a year ago about Tottenham, which I was absolutely battered for, to use journalism vernacular, because I said, this is not my team, but I could happily watch these dreamy footballers play this way over 38 Premier League. If you could guarantee your season ticket money to watch Spurs play the way they do for 80-90% of their games, sign me up.
Well, without a trophy.
Without a trophy. If you can guarantee that, I'll take that. Because you enjoy, you are, because of if you are guaranteed
the quality,
the style, the swagger, the goals, and the players that they have.
Put your swagger on the table.
No, but how much, if we're saying that what fans really remember is the feelings, the nights, the memories, the experiences of those great nights winning trophies. If you were in some way able to measure enjoyment and how, if you said, right, Manchester United fans, how much have you enjoyed the last 3-4 years versus how much have Tottenham's fans enjoyed the last 3 or 4 years? How much have Liverpool's fans enjoyed the last 3 or 4 years? Liverpool's fans are having a whale of a time, and this is a club that whose tradition is all about winning trophies. And I did a piece back in August about Liverpool and could this be the year? And I was speaking to fans, and one of them said, we've had about as much fun as it's possible to have without winning a trophy. Would it have made a vast difference to the fun we've had if we'd won the League Cup in 2016 when we got to the final? Would it have really registered 2.5 years later? I think if you look at in terms of the fun Liverpool have had, the fun Spurs have had, the misery Manchester United have had, I don't think winning trophies has had the desired effect. Mourinho would present winning trophies as the ultimate sign of how you perform as a manager. Now, generally it is, but would you say that Mourinho, having won 2 trophies in that first season, has performed better as Manchester United manager than Klopp has performed as Liverpool manager, or than Pochettino has as Tottenham manager? Because I certainly wouldn't. I think he's happens to have won two trophies.
Happens to have. You say it as if like it's just like he's won it in the lottery.
No, but
let's draw a ticket out. You've happened to win a trophy.
No, but if you look at Mourinho's first season, they got to the Europa League final. They slogged and ground their way to Europa League final, beating nobody that was really a great team, but beating Ajax in the final, beating Celta Vigo in the semi-final, and it was an achievement. It was an achievement, and it's a tick. It's a big box ticks. It's a trophy in the cabinet. That is all important. Liverpool got to the final in Klopp's first season, and beating Southampton and
great final.
Hull and Southampton.
Best final at the new Wembley season.
It was a good game, that.
But exciting.
It was exciting. Southampton made it very exciting. The Liverpool got to the final, beating United.
Liverpool got to last year's
Dortmund,
final, beating
Villarreal,
Spurs, by the way.
Played Sevilla in the final. It was a different Europa League. You couldn't say that Mourinho managed better to get United to win that Europa League than Klopp did to get Liverpool to that final. You can't really say that the last 2 seasons Mourinho has managed United better than Klopp has managed Liverpool. If you look at one thing I find really interesting, because
I can't say that.
Well, you can say that, and I'll say you're wrong. But I'll say one interesting thing. When you look at I've read a lot in the last few days, people saying Liverpool's player. If you were looking at the 2 squads, you take 8 Liverpool players in your 11, or 9 Liverpool players, 11. That's a few people have said that, and obviously De Gea gets a mention, Pogba gets a mention in terms of United's great players. But if you put those squads together, on paper, 2 or 3 years ago, you'd have said, well, United have much of the stronger squad. Pogba, Lukaku, Matic, etc. Klopp has improved players at Liverpool across the board, and they've bought really well.
Wisely.
And they've bought really well
all
into a system.
all the challenging positions have been filled.
Yeah.
I mean, the goalkeeper already, Becker.
Looks like an absolute snip now.
Absolute snip. Van Dijk, People, 75 million.
Yep.
People said, "Oh, that's too much," but he's bossing it.
You know, the
They
other thing
concede
that-
very, very little.
You know, the other thing that really sort of kind of catches my eye about the Van Dijk thing is why has Van Dijk gone to Liverpool? It's because of Jurgen Klopp.
Yes.
Jurgen Klopp has basically sold him the dream because he's re-energised that football club.
he has, yeah.
What has Pep Guardiola done at Man City? He's re-energised that football club. It was a nightmare first year for Guardiola, to be honest, wasn't it? And we all probably sat round at some point around this table thinking, well, has he lost his magic? Oh, it was always easy to win at Barcelona and Bayern Munich. Well, actually, it took him a year.
Yeah.
And in fairness to José Mourinho, his first year was a decent one.
City didn't need re-energising.
Oh,
Well,
Neil,
they
come
really
on.
did. They
They
really
certainly
did.
did.
They are.
And especially
They were already
espe-
on their way.
But especially to
finished level
play
with-
the
Don't
Barcelona way in the
Yeah.
Premier League.
Van Gaal.
Do you know what I mean?
It's a joy, isn't it?
Well, it's an absolute joy. I mean, you know, you really do enjoy watching it. I mean, you talk about re-energising. Emery's done the same.
Yeah.
With less resource, I think, in terms of finance.
Yeah, but Arsenal were on the way backwards. I think City, all right, they'd had a bad season before Pep went there, but they were still on the right path. You could still see it was going to work. You could still see them challenging for trophies. That's what I mean. I don't mean he didn't come in when he had bad trophies. And he also inherited some very, very good players who were the spine of the title-winning teams. So, you know, it's not like he was picking up the reins from Stuart Pearce or anything like that.
No, but David De Gea's there. I think you look at Jose Mourinho's recent record, and you know, I look at players that have gone backwards. Paul Pogba,
And a lot of those purchases are Mourinho's, aren't they?
Yeah.
Paul Pogba
Yeah.
played
All of them.
absolutely in the World Cup final was absolutely sensational for France.
Different
You'd
management
all say-
style, though, wasn't it?
Absolutely, well, it's
Different
good
management
management.
style.
Getting,
Do you know what I mean?
Fancy that, being a good manager, managing your players, so you get the best out of your player.
Yeah.
Fancy
I
that.
mean, there's good players at Old Trafford, clearly. And it wouldn't surprise me if United got a point today, because those are the sort of games that traditionally he will turn up for and have a plan. And if there's one game that Man United should be up for, it should be that one, shouldn't it?
Back page of the Sun this morning, Neil. 90% of United's first team squad no longer back Mourinho.
What do you want me to say? I'm not going to criticise the story in my own page.
You
I mean,
can do. It's up
I
to
don't
you
know
whether
where.
you- whether you think
There's
it's right or
obviously.
not. I mean, you're his biggest. No one's defended Jose Mourinho around this table
Yeah, well,
more than you over the years.
Absolutely, and there are obviously some players who aren't as happy with them or aren't happy with them. And when a team's doing badly, players can fall out with the manager, and when they're not being played, they can fall out with the manager and what have you. And there clearly is issues with him and a number of players. People like Sanchez, obviously Pogba. They speak, but very. Functionally officially, like you go there, but there's no warmth there or anything like that. So there is a problem with the relationship, which I actually didn't see in his first season. I thought the spirit and everything was actually really good then, and it has become a problem. His frustrations at various things that started. We saw this starting in the summer when we were on the pre-season tour, where he was a bit grisly. The fact that he hadn't got a centre back, there was stuff narking him. And that sort of carried into the season, but I don't doubt he still wants to make this work.
If Mourinho goes, do you go with him? If he
Depends where he goes.
If he takes his Inter Milan job, do you then pop up you'll be the Milan correspondent for the Sun? Is that
Just a
what will
quick,
happen?
to get one of those tapes when you can learn Italian in a week or something like that. Put it in the car, and
That's
then
the
I'll
sort
be
of thing
away.
he does, isn't it? He learns a language in a week.
Well, I know he does it very well as well.
Okay.
I just don't see Mourinho being there next season. Do you? I can't see it. I cannot see that. I mean, Man United is a club of class and tradition. The point is they win trophies and they do it with style, and that's the difference.
And it's not happening.
It's not
I mean,
happening.
you
And
talk about-
Mourinho, I just think he's... I'm sorry, but
I just
can't
think
see him at
he-
the club
I just
next
think.
season.
Sorry, Rodney.
I was going to say, you talked about falling out with players. That's a lot of players to fall out with, isn't it? You've named like half a team.
Well, yeah.
I mean, Sanchez was almost meant to be the icing on the cake, just making that difference. What's happened there?
Well,
Sanchez
I
at
think
his best
Sanchez
at
has a little bit of
Arsenal,
the burden
at
to bear on that
United,
one.
playing in the same, would have made a vital difference. What's gone wrong there?
There is a situation with United where if they were to get rid of Mourinho, whether it's mid-season or at the end of the season, there's no quick fix because the club is a mess in terms of the club has been run to the whim of the Glazers, who have no interest in football, by Ed Woodward, who has limited knowledge and experience of football, and it shows. That they're a club without a director of football, they're a club without a vision, a strategy. Their priorities are all commercial, financial, and that is at the root of all the problems.
But they've still found the money to give to the manager.
Found the money. It's the money that it's the money that the club has.
All right, found's the wrong word. They've still made available the money to the manager to buy the players he's identified to make his team better, and I don't think a chief executive can do much more than that.
Well, appoint people who have a football vision.
Well,
if their commercial department were being run as badly and underperforming as badly as their football department has been the last 5 years, do you think Ed Woodward and the Glazers would be as complacent about it as they have been about football? Because they wouldn't. Because that's their priorities are commercial. Their priorities are commercial.
Yeah, we're going to move on. I'm getting told off. Quick predictions. What's going to happen this afternoon? Ollie?
1-1.
Liverpool, I suspect, but United could throw a spanner in the works.
I'm going to go for a draw.
Liverpool 2-0.
Liverpool 2-0. Big game this afternoon. It is Liverpool against Manchester United at Anfield. Next up, we're going to talk about this story on the front page of Sun. Oh, no, nothing to do with Strictly. We're going to talk about the gong for Gareth Southgate. He's going to get an OBE according to the front of the Sun this morning. More on that coming next. Welcome back. You're watching Sunday Supplement. Of course, as ever, Goals on Sunday follows us next at 11 o'clock. Let's find out what's happening with Ben and Cammy, who's on.
Morning, Neil. Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Busy show for us, Cammy.
It is indeed.
Very
yes.
excited because Neil Warnock's going to be joining us.
He certainly is indeed, Ben, and he's never short of a word or two.
Yes, on all sorts of subjects. So lots of that to discuss, as well as West Ham's continuing dominance in mid-table as we slowly climb to the Champions League. It's only a matter of time, Cam. We'll be live at 11 o'clock.
Move on.
Neil Warnock. I don't think he's talking to me at the moment. I think he's a bit upset with me after Cardiff Man City last season. Do you remember that in the FA Cup? I think I described his team as agricultural.
Oh, right.
One of their players was sent off for an overzealous challenge.
But it'll have been the
The
ref's
word has
fault.
got back to me. Neil's not happy about that.
I'm
piece. But
hopefully
anyway.
in his good books because I tipped one of the very few. I tipped Cardiff to stay up. I just think they'll do it.
They've got character, haven't they?
The problem with the crossover, of
personality.
course, is when we come off air, Neil will be going on air, so I'm not going to have a chance to make amends with him. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk England. Let's talk your love letter to Martin Glenn, who's the outgoing chief executive of the Football Association.
Yeah.
You think he's done a remarkable job?
No, I said it was a remarkable 3.5-year tenure. So I think that you cannot... no, not really, which I'll explain now. He's had a remarkable 3.5 years simply because, on the one hand, you've had the national team, the England team, reaching the World Cup semi-finals. Absolutely fantastic. I think the team, Gareth Southgate, amazing, and it changed the mood of the nation during the summer, which I think can only be a positive. You look at St George's Park, you look at the under-17s, for example, throughout the age groups. He's
Women's game.
Yes, absolutely. And look, he has also tried to initiate, hasn't he, a pathway
I thought you were going
through
to say
the national
initiate the
teams.
sale of Wembley.
Well, he certainly
we'll get
tried
onto
that.
that.
No, we'll get onto that. No, a pathway for, BAME coaches, so a proper pathway for that. So I do think he's done lots of good things under his watch. I mean, listen, he it was under his watch. He was the chief executive that pulled the plug on Sam Allardyce, and then appointed Gareth Southgate. And I think Gareth Southgate has done, in his own right, a remarkable job. I think he's been by far and away the most influential personality in sport this year. But behind the scenes, that Martin Glenn has overseen an incredible time. I think also he's left the FA in a much more stable position financially. He's done well, and I think if you speak to a lot of people behind the scenes at the FA, they will say that what he's done as a chief executive per se has been overwhelmingly positive. During that time, we come on to the fact that basically he heavily pushed the sale of Wembley, which then obviously ultimately didn't happen. And I guess to an extent you put your reputation and neck on the line for something like that, don't you? I thought it was a no-brainer. I still cannot believe it didn't happen. It's just such a ridiculous thing that ultimately I think some of the outdated members of the FA Council, clearly weren't going to have So you had to pull the plug on it. And I guess if you could say that it was one of those failings, then I guess he's modernised the FA to an extent, but he hasn't modernised everyone's thinking, I guess. Also, you've had, Mark Sampson, you've had Eni Aluko, basically he put his foot in his mouth a couple of times, hasn't he, and sort of high-profile gaffes. I'm not a football man, and the reference in the Star of David, sort of in a sort of a interview with journalists, sort of in the same sentence as swastikas, which you can't get away from the fact that it's not been a controversial reign. But I would argue that during his 3.5-year tenure, overall, he has been, I think, immensely positive for the standing of the national game, the way that he's promoted certain things within the FA. He's modernised it to an extent as far as you could go, and I think generally he's been positive for the association.
That's John Cross there from the FA. Sorry, Rodney.
Yes.
Thoughts on Glenn and his 3.5 years at the FA?
Probably have to agree with John, really. I mean, I interviewed him last year, and he was always very enthusiastic as well. Didn't come from football, I think, which probably seemed a bit strange at the time. But he, as you said, in terms of BME coaches, he was very positive about that. The women's game, he was pushing that forward as well. We've seen the success there. So, I mean, if you look at the 3.5 years, it's probably an 8, 9 out of 10, really, I think, in terms of what he's done. Be interested to see where he ends up, actually.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, if we're talking about England's progress on the pitch and the positivity around the national team being one of the reasons for his increased reputation or for positive perceptions of his tenure, I think those are all down to Gareth Southgate and to Dan Ashworth, who I think will be missed far more than Martin Glenn. I mean, they've had so many chief executives and so many different chairmen, and some have come and gone very quickly, some have made no impact. I think he's made some impact, but I think if we talk about the people who are going to leave the FA in the next months, who will be missed and who will be not, I think Dan Ashworth, who's leaving to be Brighton's director of football, I think that is a far, far bigger loss, because I think a lot of the positivity around, the culture around the England team, the changes made there, I think they've come from Dan Ashworth, and he, these things that were put in place before Martin Glenn arrived. I think Martin Glenn has, I'd say, he's probably done an average job, personally.
I mean,
What about Gareth Southgate's job? He's on the front of the Sun this morning. He's going to get an OBE in the New Year's honours list. Does he deserve one of those?
Yes, he does, definitely. I mean, he, lifted the nation last summer.
Didn't win a trophy, though.
No. But, made a generation of kids fall back in love with the national team, and I think that's bigger than any trophy. Well, probably not bigger than the World Cup, to be fair, but that is a trophy in itself, to manage to have inspired that. I think we never see it, do we? When we're all at World Cups and we're at the games. But England this summer was a fantastic place to be when these games were on, and that was down to him and the positivity he brought. And
he's getting a gong for swagger, for inspiration.
Well, I think he just made people like England again, and that had been a big problem for about 10 years for me, that people were not interested in the national team. There was a bit of vitriol around it, managers were getting a bit... And he's just put a nice face on the England team again and got them playing interesting football where it was.
And beating big teams.
Absolutely.
After
big
the World Cup.
results.
Yeah, after
big
the World
results.
And
So the
it
future
sounds
will
very
appear
similar
bright.
to the job that Klopp and Pochettino have done for,
Putting a smile on people's faces. They enjoy watching the team. There's a lot of enthusiasm about it.
And done a huge thing for the waistcoat industry as well. So that's excellent. But he absolutely thoroughly deserved. And I knew Gareth back in his Aston Villa days as a player, and he was one of the nicest people you could meet then. And I'm sure it's exactly the same.
Well, on that
exactly
basis,
now.
give the man a gong. Neil likes him. There you go. Give him a New Year.
You see, this is there's a bullying.
He's a very good guy.
There's a bullying culture in here, which I just don't like.
I think that should set the media. I should think that should set the media agenda for the next week.
Absolutely.
Neil Custis being bullied on this programme. OK, next up, Arsenal. They're bullying a few teams. They're 22 unbeaten. More on them coming up. It's coming next. They play Southampton this afternoon. As promised, as billed, we're going to talk Southampton Arsenal in a few moments' time, but I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about this piece that Pochettino's been talking about. It's on the back of the Sunday People this morning. Pochettino, my Spurs, they can dare to dream. That's after Eriksen scored late on for them in their 1-0 victory against Burnley at Wembley yesterday, Ollie. Of course, Arsenal and Tottenham do clash later on in the week, and of course that is in the League Cup. But can they really dare to dream of winning the Premier League? 5 points behind Manchester City, 5 points behind Liverpool, sorry, at the top. Can they do it?
I would be surprised if they won it. I don't think many people would disagree if you said they were third favourites or at best. I think most people envisage either a one-horse race with Man City steaming away or with Liverpool clinging on and making it a two-horse race. I think for Spurs to, even the few points they've dropped so far, I think it would be hard for Spurs to really challenge for the title unless Man City or Liverpool slow down a lot. So I think it's very difficult for them to win the Premier League, but absolutely they're right to dream. Why wouldn't you if you're in that position and winning games? I mean, the position, their outlook. I know they lost the North London derby, but their outlook looks a lot better than it did sort of a couple of months ago. Their results are very good.
Yeah, they are good. You've got the league table in front of you, Neil, haven't you? You should have corrected me. They're 5 points behind Man City, aren't they? I think.
Oh, yeah.
After
Yes.
City's win yesterday, yeah. I knew you were here for something. Rodney, let's talk...
This bullying continues.
Let's
You know,
talk...
Tottenham are actually... Is it right they're 50-1 to win the title?
Well, I imagine they would be. They're going to be outsiders.
Who's that?
Spurs.
But 50-1's huge.
I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just to go back to the, I think
Put a
Tottenham are a very
tenner on
good
it
side who, if they just maybe even believed a little bit more, he's done a fantastic job there, I think, Pochettino, and he's got really good players.
Completely agree, yeah.
And I think yesterday proves that they know how to grind out results as well. You know, they play some great football.
Yeah, they certainly do. Arsenal playing some great football as well, though, under Unai Emery. 22 games unbeaten. They've set the tempo, or they've certainly hit some form. What are their aspirations?
I still think it'll be a struggle to finish in the top four, but they've made it interesting. I think if they can get as far away from Man United as possible, that helps, because I think United will get better. If he continues at the rate that he's going, why wouldn't they be in the shake-up of the Chelsea and the Tottenham for those other places? I think Arsenal fans have got to give great recognition to Unai Emery. What he's done since he's arrived, with basically the same set of players that Arsene Wenger had, John, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? OK, I think Torreira's a key signing. Sure. I think Socrates is getting there as well as that sort of horrible, reliable defender. But I think defensively, that's where Arsenal are going to have problems. But do not underestimate the fact that they've got two really good goal scorers in terms of Lacazette and Aubameyang, who can get them out of trouble. Because I think on that run, they haven't always convinced in some of the games. I think we were saying before. I mean, I think lucky to get out of jail against Everton, Wolves, Watford. You know, so it's not a perfect scenario there right now, but a couple of transfer windows, and I think Arsenal could possibly be back in a serious shake-up for honours.
You're coming off a long run up here, aren't you?
Rodney said it all very eloquently for me.
Come on, what's he done?
I think what the best thing that you can say about him was that I thought it would take, say, 3 windows and maybe into his second season before you'd see an impact. And yet he's made a remarkable I didn't think they'd stand a chance of getting in the top 4. And listen, ultimately, I probably agree with you, Rodney, that basically I think they might fall just short. But to even be in with a shout, I think, of the top 4, bearing in mind the distance that they fell short last season between 6th and 4th was huge, let alone the title race. And we talked about managers re-energising before. He's re-energised.
And coaching players as well.
Yes, yes. They work so much better off the ball.
Arsenal players are working harder than they've ever done.
Absolutely.
Say he was to finish outside the top 4 and win 2 trophies in his first season. How would that rate?
Well, no, I think it would be good. Neil, we talk about. I think we talk about comparing kind of, you know, where does top 4 rank as compared to trophies, but football's changed, isn't it? The modern management now would see it as a greater achievement, let's be honest, of finishing in the top 4 than winning an FA Cup or League Cup. I mean, you know, Arsene Wenger now has the best record of any manager in the FA Cup, but Arsenal fans basically decided enough was enough because he couldn't anymore get in the top four, and they wanted change. Well, there's your answer. Football has evolved, it's changed, the ground rules have changed, and basically now Arsenal fans will judge Emery, I think, I should add here, after 2 years, I would say, whether he can get Arsenal back in the top four. Because I think if he did it in the first year, it would be a remarkable achievement. I still think that might be a long haul, but, you know, the squad wasn't in great shape, a bit unbalanced.
And the atmosphere is better there now, isn't it, as well?
It's buzzing
Because it was
now,
really
isn't it?
toxic over the last few years.
Has he made it clear who's boss in terms of his relationship with star players? Mesut Ozil?
Well, I mean, Mesut Ozil would be the obvious one, and it seemed to sort of go in stages with Ozil where he's had some good performances, but they've also played very well without him in games where he's been on the bench, etc. And I always felt that Ozil would be a fascinating one this season because his style is all about intensity and work rate. And Mesut Ozil's style is it's getting on for the opposite, isn't it? It's about sort of floating through games often, and I don't think that is something that Ozil that Emery wants to embrace particularly. So Ozil is going to have to change if he's going to survive that, and it now feels, you know, whereas last January when he signed his contract, you thought, well, do you really want to be a part of Arsenal for the next 4 years? And now it looks like Arsenal is something where you would want to work harder to remain part of that.
Emery is cajoling players from minute one, isn't he?
Yeah.
All the way through. Yeah. Every high-profile player at Arsenal has been substituted at some stage.
There's no comfort zone.
There's no comfort zone.
No.
So
his treatment of Ozil, I think, has been brutal, but he is giving him tough love. I just don't think we'll see Ozil on a regular basis. We might see him sort of dropped in here and there in sort of away games, but does he offer enough work rate on a regular basis to be a regular away from home? We were there. We marvelled about his performance against Leicester.
Yes.
Why do we go to see football? We go and see that sort of performance. Yeah. Absolutely.
But it's just not consistent enough, though, is it?
But next game he goes to Crystal Palace with the armband, and you wouldn't know who's on the pitch. And then basically takes the armband off in a huff.
Costy, I've got to ask you actually. It's becoming a bit of a crusade of mine about these sleeves, and we've spoken about it, haven't we? Because the Arsenal tradition is to, if the captain decides to wear short sleeve shirts,
everybody else does the same.
That all the players must follow suit. But it's caught up. It's blurred. The lines are blurred a little bit because of all the base layers that the players wear these days. Where do you stand on it? People say, look, does it matter what they wear? But this is a tradition that was always respected under Wenger, wasn't it? Yeah,
basically the captain sets the tone. He wears short sleeves or long sleeves. The rest of the team follows suit. And look, it's something that dates back, you know, basically the best part of 100 years, and it's a strong, entrenched tradition that, and Wenger always embraced those things. I like that sort of thing. It's just it's a little quirk. It's a sort of almost a modern twist on old traditions, and I still think they should respect it. I'd like them to carry on doing it.
Should do it on here.
Yeah. Well, we do it on here because if you wear a suit jacket, look what happens with the guests. It's like magic.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. We've run out of time today.
Your size would fit me, but anyway.
We've run out of time today. Okay. Thanks very much to the guests this morning, to John Cross, to Rodney for joining us, to Ollie, and of course to Neil. Okay, lots of football coming your way. First up, it's Hibernian. They're playing Celtic. That's this afternoon from 12. Southampton against Arsenal is at 12:30. The big one, Liverpool against Manchester United from 3:30. Download the Sky Sports app. You can watch the in-game goals and the highlights on your mobile phone. Next up, of course, it's Goals on Sunday. Ben and Cammy, they're waiting for Neil Warnock, Cardiff City manager. Goals on Sunday is next up. Goals on Sunday. Okay, don't forget you can download the podcast from all the usual places. You can catch up with the show. It's on demand as well. We'll see you next week, the same time, the same place at 9:30. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Bye for now.
Sky Sports Premier League. Feel it all.
And it looks like the contractor needs to bring on a super subby. Super Subby proudly sponsors Sunday Supplement.